Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise, and I was just trying to get to the bottom of my massive pile of reaction fodder here. Jesus, I've got lots of shit. Like, every time some sort of, like, jabroni content shows up in my recommendation and it looks even mildly promising, I stick it in here. There's stuff going back a couple of years now. So, let me see. We've got some options. I mean, we could continue. Yesterday we were did sort of a bilingual Seagull channel stream, looking at the utterly ridiculous way the media are trying to whitewash the biography of Sebastián Piñera, who made much of Chile very happy by dying recently. And and that shit was wild. We could continue that, but of course, there are all sorts of other options as well. I mean, there's more of the quad. Check that out. There's some Xander Hole stuff that might be promising. And, of course, I am interested in what you think in chat. And, yeah. Okay, good. That's on. Hello, Nuariaguara, ¿cómo estás? Ah, te perdiste algo anoche, porque estábamos viendo, ya, bueno, la canonización mediática del Piraña. Y... la wea patética. Ya, yo... estoy haciendo algo, bueno, por primera vez. Estoy componiendo algo. Que, bueno, que va a ser como un antídoto a todo eso. Un requiem por un conche su madre. Hello, River Rune, how you doing? So, we got lots and lots of options here. As I was just showing, it takes forever for me to scroll down to the bottom of this thing. We've got Justine Brooke Murray, the Jewish pageant queen fighting Hamas supporters, the Quad interviews. We've got... Oh, yeah. Oh, that happens. I would imagine you must be exhausted lately. The new hostage deal explained and why it means Israel's defeat. Biden derangement syndrome is a problem. That's Xander Hole. I mean, one thing I forgot to show. I showed the chorus that became such a hit in Chile during Piñera's last time in government. Piñera, conche su madre. Yeah, but what I forgot to mention, because they were talking all about the main aspects of his time as president and his both administrations, and somehow they left out, and I left it out too, unfortunately, the time when literally over 10% of the population of Chile took to the streets. Like 2 million people, 1 million plus in Santiago alone, in a country of 18 million, took to the streets on one day with one demand, and that was Piñera's resignation. And somehow, like, all the shit, they, like, all the shit about the miners, and, oh, he was, I'm surprised that they didn't bring up the time that he was, like, offering people a chokman to, God, I forget what it was. This was like his incentive to go off and do something to like spite the student movement back, and trying to make him look like the hero over the earthquake in Iceland and all that shit. But somehow I forgot the part where literally 2 million people out of 18 million went on the streets. I mean, amazing images, huge numbers of people in a country without that many people in it. Specifically to demand his resignation. You know, they're talking about all the complicated things, toda la coyuntura complejísima que tuvo que enfrentar. Y ni una palabra de saber cuando 2 millones de personas salieron a la calle para pedirle la renuncia. And the wildest part of that was his response to literally over 10% of the country's population going out on the streets, meaning that obviously the number of people who wanted to but couldn't was considerably higher. To demand his fucking resignation was to declare it a victory for himself. I mean, that's the kind of guy who died the other day. Like, I mean, así de careraja es ese weón, bien muerto está. So, where shall we go? We want to look at the Quad. We got some of their bullshit. We got some Xanderhole bullshit. It is. That is what that is precisely what this thing I'm composing, which is the very first time I've ever composed anything. I don't know how to compose shit. I've listened to lots of orchestral music. I've never tried to put any together, but this is supposed to be the antidote to that. And, I mean, it's taking some time. But I think it's gonna be good. But, okay, so, what's everyone's pleasure? We've got, okay. Then there's also, we've got some shit from Haz, Grayson on MAGA and Marxism in America. That should be bad. Any preferences at all? I'm kind of leaning towards doing either this Biden derangement syndrome thing from Xanderhole, that should be good, or something from the Quad. Such a shitty name, too, for a bunch of shitty people. Oh, there's also Fighting for Israel in an Age of Identity Politics. I mean, continuing the trend that... Oh, yes, the beauty queen. I've got that one, yeah. Yeah, the Jewish pageant queen fighting Hamas supporters. I can go kind of either way. So... Shall we do that? The Jewish beauty queen fighting Hamas supporters? I'm up for it. Get ready for the only pro-Israel propaganda program with these awful fucking people.
The church, there are no churches in Gaza. Unfortunately, there are no Christians.
And now the Arab population has increased over time for all their whining. But can I add one thing to that?
Yep.
And why? I thought it was fascinating, distressing.
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Ugh, God, they suck. Still proud of that animation. Okay, here we go. The Jewish pageant queen. She slays the Israel haters, according to the thumbnail. Oh, I bet. Bring it on. Let's see how much this sucks. Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a Dyson. I can already feel it. Oh, just fucking load for me, will you?
And now we're privileged to have on our show our friend Justine.
And of course, as always, let me know if I need to do anything to the audio. Oh wow, this I need to do something to the video. Wow, that's blurry as hell. The fake ass deputy mayor.
From the United States. Welcome, Justine.
Thank you for having me.
So, why are you here?
First,
I have to say, I mean, I was talking last time we were joined together last week, I think it was, when that fucking pastor was sporting that Star of David, and how I'm just very much not okay with that sort of fucking cultural appropriation. But I'm actually, like, she is Jewish, and she's, like, specifically a pro-Israel propagandist. And actually, I think that's worse. They really, I mean, as much as I don't like it when these fucking evangelical assholes decide to appropriate our symbols to justify their racism.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's somehow even more fucked up when, like, when Israel does it. I mean, and now I'm kind of curious. Justine Brookman, I'm just gonna look her up. I like to look people up when I can. Okay. Turning Point USA. Okay, so she's with the white nationalist outfit. I mean, she's with just straight up fash. She also, wait, Prager University. She's with the Daily Caller, for fuck's sake. The Daily Caller, they're anti-Semitic as fuck. The New York Young Republican, former producer for One American News Network. This is her LinkedIn bio. She assisted in the office of Vice President Mike Pence. She stood with Donald Trump. Again, this is somebody who claims to be fighting anti-Semitism. I'm sure we're about to hear how she's fighting anti-Semitism. And one of the most the most openly anti-Semitic U.S. president in generations. She was standing with him as he signed his shitty ass free speech for Nazis executive order. You wonder what the fuck Joe Piscopo's doing these days? I'm sure you weren't. I wasn't. Because, like, I haven't thought about that motherfucker since, like, sometime in the late 80s. He's got a right-wing talk show, too. And she's been on Dennis Prager. And she was a fellow for Camera, the people who, like, professionally lie for Israel. Yeah, oh god. Let's see. And campus reform. Wow, okay, so, like, she is what we in Yiddish would say a moiser. She actually, like, she's actively selling us out to Nazis. But they have her on because she's a Zionist, and that's kind of what Zionists have a history of doing, so.
I have been a Jewish advocate my whole life. I was crowned Miss Central Jersey on October 7th.
Wow.
Wow.
And we can't really use our phones while we're competing, while we're getting ready. But one of the candidates, she's Israeli. And
okay, like,
we were just huddled.
She's got so much fucking foundation on, it low-key looks like vinyl.
Together every chance we got to get on our phones, the small amount we had, we kept checking for updates. She kept calling her family, trying to...
Like, has nobody told this girl about powder? Like, the whole point of powder is you're gonna be under these lights. You do the foundation and you're under these lights. You look like you just got done fucking working out or being in the sauna. The whole point of powder is so that shit doesn't happen.
To reach out to family members that she had to make sure everyone was okay. I sing Shalom Aleichem all the time for the talent portion. They make you sing a talent. Well, in a couple months later, not a couple months, in November, I went to the Rockefeller.
You won. Say it.
Oh, by the way, I won.
She won the competition.
Yeah, like, who gives a shit? Yeah, like, wow, she's a genocidal beauty queen, I guess, for central New Jersey. I guess that means, no, central Jersey, she wouldn't be representing Caleb Maupin's first cult compound, I guess. That would be North Jersey.
On October 7th. And then on November, what happened?
In November, when all the jihadis in New York were out calling for the murder of Jews, they were skirmishing.
I love how you can just make this shit up on the quad. You don't have to actually even pretend to be relating to the timeline that most people are in. You can just kind of claim that you can just claim this shit, and nobody will stop you.
Intifada, I decided to go to the Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting and the protests, the peaceful protests, and check.
What's with the fucking scare quotes? I've seen the video. They were that thing. Like, literally nobody could find anything that suggested they were anything else. They were loud as hell. They were certainly disruptive. White supremacists were really pissed off. It was specifically the far right that was making a meal out of it. They really loved. They were really excited because it's the war on Christmas, which is what JNS, which we're watching right now, also likes to claim those protests over the genocide were. I mean,
check out what was happening. I brought my friend Ted. Ted almost got beaten up by these masked military-aged men who were jumping over these barricades.
Masked military-age men. I love that. That's cute. So what she's saying is they are people who are around 18. Masked military. You can tell that she did a fucking internship with camera. Because this is one of the things they teach you when you do this sort of propaganda. To avoid using words like teenager or something like that, and it makes them sound relatable when they've been murdered. Instead, you say shit like military-age men.
They were summoning me over. They were shouting, I will eat you alive, B-word, this...
Yeah, right. I'd love to see the footage of this. Citation needed.
How did they know? Did you have one like a...
Yeah, that's a very good question that I don't think she was hoping you would ask.
Lily Flag shirt or...
But this was at the Christmas tree?
At the Christmas tree light.
Like, seriously, with all the right-wingers who are trying to make propaganda bank on that shit, if this happened, I'm sure we would have footage and we would have all seen it by now.
So they were disturbing regular American Christians who were there for the lighting, right?
Yeah.
They were regular American Christians, but...
A regular American, meaning white.
You had this mob of jihadist protesters, this mob of anti-Israel, anti-Semites, and they were...
Shut the... Okay, she needs to just shut the fuck up about anti-Semitism. You can't work with fucking Turning Point USA and One American News and Donald Trump and fucking Mike Pence and the Daily fucking Caller and claim to be against anti-Semitism. You don't get to do that.
It was a mix of radical Islamists who were actually radical in their religion, and then you had a bunch of Maoist little college students.
I'm sure that she knows what a Maoist is, you know.
Who are 20 years old, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But
how old is she, incidentally? Well, she just graduated, let me see, is she like, when did she graduate Syracuse Uni? Yeah, I mean, she's like in her early 20s too.
They go to these colleges like NYU, and they're taught that Israel is oppressive, that Jews are all white. How does she know what universities
people were going to? Like, did they tell her this?
White privilege, critical race theory. So
Oh, well, we're getting all the buzzwords.
they want to go after every identity group that happens to be very successful. So Jews are part of that group.
Right.
So therefore Jews are white. It's
Right. Let me just note, lots of Jews were at the protest she's talking about.
it's the same type of hate-filled ideology that got us murdered in the Holocaust.
What the fuck did she just say? Anti-racism is the same kind of hate-filled ideology that got us murdered in the Holocaust. She's literally working with the people who cheerleaded that sort of thing. The people, she's literally working with people who were actually kind of think the Holocaust was a good thing that should have happened, or deny it, and shit. She's working with fucking Nazis, and she's gonna say this kind of shit.
Yes.
It's the same stereotype, and they said it about white people. White people control the world, so therefore Jews control the world. So we're back where we started, and they were out there chanting for an intifada. They don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
I happened to
Unlike her, she obviously knows what an intifada is, because, I mean, she has, like, fucking telepathy and knows the CVs of every person at a protest.
stand in the far back. I went near the police officer, so and this was after I was getting screamed at. And the reason I was being screamed at is because my friend Ted has a big mouth.
He started all the trouble.
Okay, so she left out the bit where I'm guessing her friend Ted said some racist things.
You have to get him on the show.
But it's funny because
No, what did he say, Justine? What did he say? What did Ted, the troublemaker, say?
he's still so charismatic. All he was doing was asking them questions. What happened on October 8th? Why do you support October 8th? Obviously, they sniffed him out. And
Well, yes, they figured out that he was some far-right asshole who was looking to start some shit, and they told him to fuck off. That's what you do with far-right assholes. Brooke, Justine, Murray, whatever the fuck, you're a far-right asshole. Decent company isn't gonna like being around you.
And plus, he was dressed so nicely in a suit. These guys are wearing Antifa masks.
Yeah.
So
Antifa masks, right. I mean, like, it's one thing that gets me about this is, like, Zionists will do one of two things when you bring up the fact that Zionists enthusiastically collaborated with the Nazis. One is to just deny it and pretend it didn't happen. The other is to say it's an ancient history, it's nothing to do with anything, it's ridiculous to be bringing this up now. But, like, people like her, I read you her fucking LinkedIn bio. She is a fucking example of this. She is an example of how it's not ancient history, it's still going on.
Yeah, that's the thing. The cowards on top of it. They're wearing masks. They won't even let
Well, it's almost like there's a fucking pandemic going on.
people see what their faces look like.
they'll blast your face all over social media, but
I mean, you really shouldn't be complaining there. You realize that when you go on a show like this, your face is going to be everywhere anyway.
they won't show their face. It's pretty interesting, and
So let's get back to your.
It's almost like people don't want to get arrested and fucked up.
First of all, you won that, and then what happened subsequently?
Oh, well,
so during this protest, I was filming, and I said to my camera, "I'm here in front of a bunch of jihadists." Well, this woman,
Which is just
turned around
libel.
immediately, whipped her head around, and started screaming at me, "You just called them jihadists. You're a racist. You're a bigot. You're an Islamophobe. You're a Zionist. You're this." And then
well, I mean, like, which part of that is she gonna deny? I mean, so what she's saying here is these people she's just been casually describing as jihadis, possibly would not, actually accept that characterization of what they stand for, but then that she's aware of this, But this does not lead her to reconsider because she's a professional liar.
She starts filming me and she starts following me out of the protest, screaming, "Hey, what are you doing, Blondie, Blondie?" And then saying all these, I guess, white girl names: Haley, Kaylee, Farron.
Yeah, wow. It's like you go and you try to start shit with people and somebody sends you packing. Like, that's so weird how that happens. Well, I mean, who knew that actions and consequences came together like that? I mean, and notice the worst thing she can say is that they fucking took the piss out of her and sent her away. Like, not that she got beat up or anything like that. She got filmed, which made sense because she was starting an altercation. And, you know, people like this, these sorts of propagandists, far-right assholes, they have this history of lying about stuff like that in order to get people in trouble with the fucking cops. So having a documentation is not a bad idea in that situation. And the worst thing she can say happened is that they escorted her away from the protest. And River Rune. I'm not really seeing the Hamas supporters being slain here. It seems rather like she just got slain herself.
I'm pretty sure she called me Whitey. She's white. She's white.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, there's like, first of all, you don't actually necessarily know that. Second of all, there's when somebody is like specifically being like professionally white, and there's a whole thing to get into about the relationship, particularly in the U.S., with Jewish access to whiteness and Zionism, because Zionism played a big-ass role in that. In fact, a big part of why sort of like the Jewish political mainstream, you know, Jewish members of the ruling class got on the Zionist bandwagon after 1967 was because it was a way to sort of get into whiteness.
He's whiter than me, and I'm pretty white. Right.
And no contest. You are pretty fucking white.
Is this white on white racism now?
Well, I mean, and the great thing is, like, the people she hangs out with would totally disagree with the idea that she's white, and would totally not spare her when the time comes. But, like, I mean, she's still just hanging out with them because she figures that maybe she'll be one of the good ones.
So the next day, I was at work, and some people start laughing. "Hey, Justine, you're all over the internet." Yeah. I think, oh boy, but I'm used to it.
So why did you act like it was a horribly traumatic thing then? If you've been, like, putting your face out there so much and you're used to it.
Yes. I turn around, and it's a giant thread that this lovely woman posted saying, "This Miss America candidate called protesters jihadists." She found out what
that's horrible. She said what happened.
were. And that was interesting because I never told her my real name. Not that I cared. Right. You know, fine. I'll tell you my name. I stand by what I said. I actually told her my Hebrew name. Okay. Because she claimed she was Jewish. Okay.
Oh, she claims. When Jews are against Zionism, we just claim to be Jewish.
Oh. And I said, okay, what's your Hebrew name? Apparently her real name is Hebrew, but she wants Israel not to exist.
Wow, so she's Jewish and also not racist. Or at the very least, you know, like against having a racist regime existing.
So she calls Ginos, Jews in name only. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's a horrible acronym. Amongst other things, it sounds like some sort of weird like combination of a pizza roll and a tampon.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
It's like you're hanging out with fucking Nazis but other Jews are Jews in name only. Fuck off.
Jihad Ginos. So media outlet, it happened to be Newsweek. They wrote a hit piece that was written by this woman. Oh, wait a minute, I can't call her a woman. I have to call her non-binary because that was the pronouns.
Here you don't have to.
Wow, I mean, what's great is that, like, occasionally they will be like, oh, the Palestinians are so homophobic. And here they are just absolutely laughing about the fact that that here you don't have to give a shit about LGBT people's dignity. I mean, like, you make up your mind. You don't get to attack the Palestinians for being, like, allegedly, supposedly all homophobes, and then, like, be all the fucking queerphobic as fuck like this. But then I'm asking white supremacists to be consistent, and they never are, and I should know better.
We call it nothing.
If you have one thing, you're not the other thing.
So the woman.
Right. So a woman, I believe,
Like, yeah, so now we're just gonna, like, deliberately misgender her.
is friends with
Or
this
them, or whatever. We don't know this person's pronouns. We haven't actually had this person's name, which is interesting.
journalist, really activist, and they wrote this piece. And I ended up receiving lovely, informative messages helping me unlearn all of my Zionist uh-ohs. That's
So, like, okay, good. That sounds great, actually. Somebody ought to. Especially, somebody ought to tell you that just because you're blonde as fuck doesn't mean that the good people at Daily Caller actually think you should be allowed to exist. They're still anti-Semitic as fuck.
how I spent
You're just a fucking token to them.
my Hanukkah. So I became very culturally well-rounded, and I
Yeah, you can tell.
learned Arabic phrases like Dayahudi and Sharuda. Oh,
It's no, like she's combining the word that means like slag with the word with the Hebrew word for taxi somehow.
Sharmuta.
Sharmuta.
Sorry, from Jersey.
She's
Oh God, this is so God. I mean, these fucking people, they are impressively vile.
just from Jersey. She's Miss Central Jersey.
Oh God, like
Everyone. So what did they try?
God,
to
what
do?
I mean, and now this makes me wonder, like, what the fuck's up in Central Jersey?
They tried to strip it.
What did they say?
They said everyone needs to call Miss America and get this title stripped. She doesn't represent women.
Yeah, because you're doing fucking racism, and they don't like that, and like I but of course it's not fair, because if there's one thing that pro-Israel propagandists would never do, it's try to get people fired from their jobs.
She shouldn't be speaking to young women because she's an Islamophobe. She's a bigot.
Yeah, and she works with neo-Nazis.
They plastered my face on these memes, and they wrote Miss Central Jersey. Look at, she's a Zionist racist. As if
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now I have the title for the VOD of this. Miss Central Jersey is a Zionist racist. That's not a very good title, actually. But Miss Central Jersey is going to be in that shit. I think it'll be Miss Central Jersey is a Moisa who works with anti-Semites and supports genocide.
Zionist is a
bad
very
word.
hard. Hey, call me a Zionist. I'm a Zionist. If I get kicked out,
Thanks, people. That is a dirty word.
exactly.
Yes, it should be. It absolutely should be.
Or
Nope.
no? Oh, great.
Yeah, not only that, what are you doing next month? You're going for the bigger title.
Yep.
The bigot title?
It's actually in June.
In June.
I'm competing for Miss New Jersey.
Oh,
In June.
Yeah, man. Just
Oh God, I see. I don't give. I cannot find 2.5 shits to give over beauty pageants, and I particularly have never given a fuck about like Miss New Jersey. But please, tell me there's some young Palestinian woman from Jersey representing, who is up for this title as well.
Christine is going to win Miss New Jersey.
Maybe if you win Miss New Jersey, do they teach you about the importance of putting powder on when you're in front of studio lights?
All Justine did was call people by their name.
Yeah.
And this is
and said some seriously racist shit.
why she tried to get cancelled, but they didn't know who they were dealing with.
Yeah.
I actually think that they probably knew that it was an outside chance that getting somebody canceled for being a white supremacist in the U.S. Doesn't often work, because the whole cancel culture thing is some far right bullshit to begin with.
Yeah.
We're not Jews with trembling knees.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think on that note, thank you so much.
What did you... Okay. That line, which she just said, we're not Jews with trembling knees, there is a fascist rapper, a far-right rapper in Israel called Subliminal. I mean, he's been rapping badly for about 20 years and saying all sorts of fucked up racist shit. And in his latest track, which went viral, which is all about how, there are not going to be any fucking Palestinians anymore, and we're going to annihilate them, and all sorts of just openly genocidal shit. At one point, he decides to remind everybody how anti-Semitic Zionism is. How utterly insulting Zionism's view of Jews is, and he says, we're not the Jews with the trembling knee, not the scared Jews not the cowardly Jews with the trembling knees, which is a reference to the stereotypes that Zionism has. Like, Zionism validates these stereotypes about, like, non-Israeli Jews. See, what Zionism does is it takes anti-Semitic stereotypes about Jews and says, no, that's just the ones who aren't from Israel. I mean, and so that's what that line is. It is an utterly anti-Semitic line.
Christine, for being on our show, for being such a female warrior, and...
Yeah, such a fucking warrior. Yeah, I mean, so brave. She started some shit, cried about it on the internet, and now she's a fucking hero.
Yes, and good luck with Miss New Jersey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jesus, these fucking people. Okay, but that was really short, actually. That was way shorter than I thought. So we got time for more. So we're gonna do some more shit. Okay. There's fighting for Israel in an age of identity politics. That's, again, the Kabod. We've got Loner Box on Israel, and I've heard that's a hot mess. See. Biden derangement syndrome is a problem. Okay, we can get rid of Justine Broke Murray. Grayson on MAGA and Marxism in America. We got lots of stuff here. Evelyn Matei, tras muerte de expresidente Sebastián Piña. Any preferences? We got bunches of shit. And I do mean shit. It is shit. That is one thing you can be sure of. If it is on my list here, it's either shit or it's a recipe that I accidentally put on here. Because I'm just so used to saving things to reaction fodder. 674 videos, minus 24 that are apparently unavailable. That's how much shit I have in here. I really, should go in here and clean some of it out. So, Xander Hole, more of the quad. What's everyone's pleasure? We got tons of time. It's only 11 after midnight. So, shall we look at Loser Box? Or again, Xander Hole on Biden derangement syndrome. Or more of the horrible quad? My mother is sending me recipes for French sauces. Well, okay, this is another shortish one. So, we're gonna do Xanderhole. Biden derangement syndrome. I can't wait to hear what Biden derangement syndrome is.
Alright, everybody. It's time to talk about Biden's really bad approval ratings right now.
You mean because he's doing genocide and stuff?
I hate to say it, but Biden is not being received well by a large portion of Americans.
Yeah, especially, overwhelmingly, the people whose votes he absolutely needs if he's going to stay in the White House. I mean, like 80% of the people who actually vote for Democrats want to see the back of him.
Which is worrying when the only other option for who could be elected or re-elected at the end of 2024 is either Biden or Trump.
Motherfucker, it's only February. The Democrats could actually change their mind, say, yeah, we're not going to throw the election. We actually would like to win it, so we're going to put somebody in there that people actually like. Like, I mean, this is something that liberals have gotten a habit liberals have been in for a while now, and it is really annoying and so fucking counterproductive, even from their like electoral centric standpoint. Because the thing is, they're trying to shame. The idea is to try to shame millions and millions of people for saying that somebody who sucks, as opposed to trying to convince one guy or the handful of people who actually have any say in who gets to run in a presidential election in the U.S. that Biden sucks and that they should get somebody else. Because if it's this important not to have Trump get back into the White House, and I mean it would be nice if that didn't happen, then obviously you need to have somebody in there who's actually got some chance of winning. This isn't about putting it on, I mean, it's ridiculous, like, there's no need to put it on hard mode. So, okay.
Right now, Americans are convinced that our economy is in shambles and on the
Yes, yeah, I mean, that because actually for most people, it sucks.
edge of recession. Granted, many Americans' wages and current financial situation certainly looks and feels that way.
Wow, so what you're saying is that people have the audacity to say that the economy is bad because because millions of them are struggling to survive?
However, as it turns out, all the data is showing that Biden's reforms to the economy are resulting in significant economic growth.
That, it's like he doesn't know what any of these things mean. First of all, because economic growth does not mean that anyone's lives improve. That an economic expansion does not mean anything about that.
Across the country. He's actually been doing very well with the economy.
Like, how about real wages? How are those going up? I mean, like, is that the only fucking thing you're looking at is growth? Because you can have growth and completely avoid, and without actually doing anything to benefit the majority of the population. In fact, when that was first pulled off in the 1990s under Bill Clinton and Alan Greenspan, it was celebrated in the business press that they finally managed to have a recovery that actually made things worse for most working people.
Not only that, but if you were a conservative, you would not be able to deny that his measures for securing the border in regards to immigration have been even more aggressive than Trump's.
Well, yeah. Which is, yeah, that's not a good thing. I mean, look, you're an ex-Nazi, so maybe you have, like, a certain nostalgia for, like, the neo-Nazi wet dream that is the Biden border plan, which includes, like, basically eliminating any pretense of complying with, international law on asylum rights. Like, just completely... At the moment, there is already very little pretense of that, with the policy of not allowing refugees into the country during the pendency of their asylum proceedings. But, I mean, it was going to get rid of, like, the right to actually have even the pretense of a hearing, all sorts of fucking bullshit. I mean, like, this is objectively an absolutely horrible thing, and it is an objectively good thing that it failed. And the fact that the Democrats are, like, say, you know, they have not... I've heard, like, liberals try to spin this as, oh, they're flipping the narrative. They're flipping the narrative. No, they're not. Flipping the narrative would be to say that this is that the whole fake-ass border crisis is based on a lie, and the only real crisis is the crisis experienced by thousands and thousands and thousands of desperate people who are fleeing, running for their lives, who are running from things that are so bad that they're willing to cross the deadliest border in the world in hopes of surviving. That's the only crisis going on. So, I mean, it's... Like, but instead the Democrats are just fully accepting this bullshit narrative where there's this border crisis and the only thing for it is to make it even more dangerous for refugees to try to cross it.
Made it more humane in that he doesn't try to increase the death count.
Yeah, well, no, he did not make it more humane. He made it less humane, actually. Like, every attempt to make it harder for people to cross is going to increase the death count. That's how that works. Like, literally every single measure to make it harder to cross has increased the death count, by definition. Like, when they first started building the first wall that we're supposed to sort of forget is there, but if you go on Google Maps, Google Street View, you can look at it. You can look and see that there was a wall over hundreds and hundreds of miles of southern borderland, often through people's, like, backyards, practically, way before Trump ever got in. And that was built through the areas that it was safest to cross. Because the U.S.-Mexico border crosses through existing communities. It cuts communities in half, like Nogales, for example, amongst others. And so, in a lot of places, that border ran right through the middle of, like, what was, for all intents and purposes, one city. And that was a relatively safe way to cross. You know, no risks. But then they started shutting that stuff down, and so people have to go through the fucking desert, and the Rio Bravo, and, you know, all these fucking places, and that is much higher risk. And then you put the fucking border cops in there, and they, like, string of mass graves that they keep on leaving behind themselves. I mean, you look up mass grave U.S. border zone, there are quite a few findings of these fucking things. Like, basically there is no oversight over what the fucking Border Patrol does, and so they literally get away with murder all the time. Not to mention the fact that there, you know, the flow of coke and capital never seems to actually stop. Like, I mean, you can, there's nobody's stopping the supply of high-quality blow to the United States, which is supposedly what the Border Patrol is there for.
Of immigrants that are captured on the border, and like, kept in housing. He's, like, taken down the barbed wire and stuff. He's also increased the amount...
Oh, it's nicer concentration camps.
And foreign oil drilling permits more than any president before him, and increased domestic and foreign oil drilling permits more than...
Wait, okay, that's a good thing, Xanderhole? That's a good thing? The IPCC says we need to get to, like, net zero by the end of this decade if we're to have any fucking chance of avoiding the worst of climate change. And this motherfucker is breaking records on domestic and foreign oil extraction And that's a good thing, do you think, Xanderhole? Do you really think that's a good thing? Maybe that's actually a really fucking bad thing, Xanderhole. That in the middle of a climate disaster, where we had like 3 days of snow, like this winter, I've never. This was not a winter here. I mean, we had some cold weather briefly, but so that's a good thing, you think, Zan?
Than any president before him, and increased green energy permits more than any president before him.
Which is a very low bar.
So both left and right, he has done everything you could possibly imagine on a policy
That's
level.
not how this works. This is not how this works. It's not like you can say, oh, he did a wonderful left-wing thing, like which Xanderhole hasn't even provided an example of. He hasn't provided any example of that. Everything he's offered as an achievement has been something right-wing. Okay? But, like, it's not like you can say, oh, well, yes, he gave us universal health care. Admittedly, he also gave us extermination camps, but we got universal health care, so that's something for the left and for the right. That's not how it works, actually. Like, you can't do a bad thing and do a good thing, which he hasn't provided an example of again, and then say, well, see, there's something to please everybody. Why would anyone dislike this guy? God, like, I mean, does this guy think about what he says?
Adequately appease you, besides nuke Israel. That is, he's done literally everything you could hope for that
No, he hasn't.
is realistically possible for a president in 2024 to do.
No, he fucking hasn't. Like, okay, yeah, I mean, there is a war on trans people in this country, affecting trans people over 68% of the landmass. Like, a huge percentage of trans people, like 47% according to a recent survey, and I haven't really looked at the survey, so I don't know if that is 47% of trans people who are in states that have declared the existence of, that have criminalized the existence of trans people, or if that's 47% of trans people overall. But, I mean, you know, over 200,000 have fled their home states to get away from these laws. There are all sorts of federal powers that can be used in order to intervene and stop that kind of shit. Biden hasn't done anything about that. Like, I mean, you have seriously, like, really an attack on the right to protest on a level that you would have to go back a century in this country's history to find examples of over in Atlanta with Cop City. The federal government has powers to intervene there as well. And on a number of levels, they're not doing anything to help there. Not even, I mean, never mind, it's like actually stopping Cop City. That would be good. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying stopping the idea, you know, intervening, like, as a third-party intervener in the proceedings that are claiming that protesting is a RICO violation, and saying this is a absolutely dangerous attack on basic First Amendment rights or something like that. They definitely have the power to do that, to submit, you know, pleadings as a third-party intervener in that case, or an amicus brief, similarly. There are various ways they could do that. They haven't done that. They have not done shit. Like, I mean, and he talks about, like, the genocide in Gaza, like, the only option is nuking Israel, as opposed to the reality, which is that Biden could make a phone call, with 2 words to Netanyahu and say, yeah, it's over. That if you want to have any support from us ever again, you need to call off the dogs and let the fucking humanitarian aid in. He could do that. He's got 2 aircraft carrier strike groups in the Mediterranean right the fuck now. They're doing lethal overwatch for the genocide, to support the genocide. But those fucking strike groups have huge amounts of cargo space, and I actually spent a while sort of researching exactly what a carrier strike group in the U.S. Navy is. And it turns out one of the things they're supposedly trained for is humanitarian aid missions. Like, they could literally, with all the cargo space they have in 2 whole fucking carrier strike groups, they could load up with all the shit that Palestinians in Gaza are desperately needing, are literally dying for, dock and deliver that fucking aid, and there's nothing that Israel could do about it. There are a million things that they could do. It isn't not just nuke Israel. Like, literally, he could stop this anytime he wants, and he doesn't want.
24 to do. And he's pulled some shit off I didn't even think would be possible for him to do in the, like, this day and age as a Democrat president with such a, you know, partisan Congress and Senate, you know?
Remember, he had control of the Senate and the House. It was the Democrats swept the Senate and the House and the White House for the whole first year. He could have gotten any kind of legislation through that he wanted. And all they did was come up with all sorts of wild excuses for why none of that was done.
Well, unfortunately, what I've come to realize is that the median voter genuinely doesn't care whether or not the president is actually doing a good job.
Like, you haven't given an example of doing a good thing, though. Like, could we... Servus. Ja, das war, also, danke für den Tipp, das war eigentlich sehr interessant. Also, das hat ja sehr viel Spaß gemacht. Und der Kanal von dieser Multisingua, oder wie sie heißt, also, war richtig interessant, also ganz guter Tipp da. Ich danke ebenfalls. I mean, what gets me is this guy, like, supposedly is some kind of a leftist. But here he is, and he's making the, like, right-wing neoliberal case for Biden here. He's not even trying to say that there's anything that people other than, like, right-wing white people with money should like going on.
Because the reality of it is, their perspective on whether or not the president is doing a good job is based on who is feeding them the data.
No, I wonder if part of their perspective on whether the president is doing a good job is based on things like, say, I don't know, how well are they able to pay the rent? Or have their living expenses gone up faster than their wages have? Is there a genocide that he might be committing at the moment?
And Republicans are only hearing that the economy is bad right now.
There aren't enough people who support the Republicans to swing a study like this. The reason that Republicans are so big into gerrymandering and vote suppression is that they are in the absolute minority and they know it. Literally, if the Democrats were making policy that actually appealed to the roughly 30% of the eligible voters who de facto boycott the elections because they don't have any stake in it, they're getting screwed completely either way, then they would wipe the floor with the Republicans. They would just completely could shut them out of everything. But they're not doing that. In fact, I mean, there was a great article, and now I'm going to have to find it. What was it? Jim Hightower? Yeah, how Florida Democrats torpedoed Gore, from Jim Hightower. I'll drop the link in chat here. One of the things Jim Hightower talks about, this is, it's worth noting, this was written before the unofficial recount came out that definitively proved that there was no way that Bush won Florida. That the only reason that Bush was handed Florida is because the vote count was stopped. If all the votes had been counted, it would have gone to Gore. Now, okay. Here, let me just read you this. This is from the year 2000. This is 24 fucking years ago. Here, in the aftermath of this election, the media and political pros have zeroed in on one set of election figures while totally ignoring another set that may have been even more revealing about the presidential race. The national focus, of course, has been on the few hundred vote difference between Gore and Bush, a thin divide that was breathlessly termed a crisis for our democracy by assorted pipe-smoking pundits. Yet these same pundits didn't give a puff about a far wider electoral divide that I think poses an actual crisis for our democracy: the more than 100 million votes that went astray on Election Day. These votes weren't lost to misaligned butterfly ballots, pregnant chads, or some conniving election official deposited them in a closet. Rather, These were the uncast ballots of almost half the American electorate, who chose not to vote this year largely because they feel they've been cast out of the process by a vacuous, cynical, and elitist political system that no longer addresses their needs and aspirations. These are mostly middle and low-income folks, people making less than $50,000 a year. That's in 2000 money. I looked it up, and $50,000 a year in 2000 money is 90 grand a year in 2023 money. While they make up some 80% of the U.S. population, that ratio, incidentally, also holds fairly well. People making less than 90 grand a year right now represent 78% of the population. Exit polls on November 7 found that for the first time they've fallen to less than half the voting population. As the Clinton-Gore-Lieberman Democrats have jerked the party out from under this core populist constituency, pursuing the money and adopting the policies of the corporate and investor elite, the core constituency of the party has, big surprise, steadily dropped away. In 1992, the under 50,000 crowd made up 63% of voters. In 1996, after Clinton and Gore relentlessly and very publicly pushed NAFTA, the WTO, and other Wall Street policies for 4 years, the under 50,000 crowd dropped to 52% of voters. After 4 more years of income stagnation and decline for these families under the regime of the Clinton-Gore New Democrats, the under 50,000 crowd dropped this year to only 47% of voters. At the same time, those who are prospering under the Wall Street boom, cheered on by the policies of both the Republican and Democratic leadership, have become even more enthusiastic voters. In 1996, voters with incomes above 100 grand, about 3% of the population, made up 9% of the turnout. This year, they were 15% of the turnout. Okay, so that's 20 years ago. And the point that I make that I'm making in showing this, apart from the fact that, like, this has 20 years ago, Jim Hightower was already called it, and I have not seen anyone repeat this analysis since then. But the key here is, this is something that like Democrats and their talking heads will never acknowledge, which is that when Democrats make policies that screw over their core constituencies, that suppresses the turnout of those constituencies. Like, right-wing policies from Clinton and Gore during the 1990s led to a significant drop already at that time in the number of people making less than 50 grand, i.e. the equivalent of 90 grand today, who even bothered voting. And those are, again, people who are most likely to be voting for Democrats. So, I mean, literally, the way that these figures are easily available. You can look them up. And the thing is that Democrats, their strategists, they know perfectly well that if you really wanted to ensure massive turnout for your candidate, you would choose a candidate who is actually going to do things for, like, working class people, who are going to do things for, like, the core constituencies who would definitely vote for Democrats if they do vote. But the Democrats don't want to do that. And the thing is, at this point, there is not the sort of balance of power in the capitalist system in the U.S. to make it possible. These days, they have to give lip service to it, which is, like, very much the result of the mobilizations of the past decade. They can't, like, just openly ignore, poor people. They have to pretend to care, but that's all they do. And the thing is that, that's not going to get anywhere either. But so, like, when he's sitting here talking about, he's rattling off a list of horrible, like, right-wing policies, and it's like, why don't people like this guy? And it's like, well, you just provided a fucking list of why they don't like this guy, you absolute fucking dickhead.
And Democrats, frankly, are not informed enough on this topic to know that Biden has been handling the economy really well, right?
It's so funny how people don't understand that the economy is great just because they and everyone they know are fucking starving and struggling to, stay housed. The economy is still great just because they're fucked, but the economy is wonderful. And like Xander Holt has absolutely like Vosh is, an ignorama. Okay, he doesn't know shit about anything. Xander Holt, if anything, knows less.
Now, the conservative claim that the economy is fucked by Biden's handling of it, or fucked at all, really, is just not true. At least not on a broader level. Let's read this. If the economy is hot, why are voters so frustrated?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, again, I really don't think that this is him being dishonest so much as him simply not having enough knowledge to understand that you have to unpack these things. Because the economy doesn't exist. The economy isn't going in one direction. You can't just say the economy is good and it means everybody's doing great, because we live in a capitalist system and there are fundamental conflicts of interest at work. And when rich people are doing really well, which is what usually is meant by the economy is good, that usually means that somebody else is getting screwed.
Rarely has Washington stumbled on an issue more confounding than President Biden's low approval ratings. Among those traveling the corridors of power, you'd sooner see a confident assessment of Jimmy Hoffa's whereabouts than a clear explanation of the public's dissatisfaction.
Yeah, because none of these people, the only time these motherfuckers actually interact with the people who could straighten them out on that is in a customer service capacity. Like, literally, they're never going to hear this, because they have insulated themselves entirely away from the plebs. They're actually, it's literally palpably terrified when they actually have to interact with poor people.
The economy appears to be humming. The stock market is hitting record highs.
Yeah, that doesn't actually mean that anything's good happening for most of us. The number it's 80% of stocks are held by roughly 0.5% of the population. And most people don't have really any, literally, dude, just read, I'm not even gonna ask you to read Marx. Read a Cliff's Notes of Capital, or something. I know it's been done. Because the thing is, just because investors are doing well does not mean that the people investors are sponging off of are doing well.
The unemployment rate is near an all-time low.
Which is also meaningless, because they're talking about headline unemployment. And the thing is, the idea we're supposed to believe, when, politicians talk about this shit, is that when the headline unemployment, official unemployment drops, that means everybody who's no longer counted in there got jobs. And that is not how that works. There are all sorts of ways that you can be unemployed and not be counted, including being unemployed too long. Or if you get a part-time job because that's all that's going, when really you need a full-time job, you're underemployed, that doesn't count. If you were never technically employed to begin with, in the sense that you're in the gig economy and gigs drop off, you don't get counted. If you're not immediately available to start work for some reason, you don't get counted. Like if you're sick, for example, which a lot of people are. There are all sorts of reasons you do not get counted. So this is, this is just bullshit. And even the people who got the job, that doesn't mean they're good jobs. That doesn't mean that they're getting paid enough.
Wages are rising faster than inflation, and
yeah, by how much? Whose wages? One of the tricks that's often used here is that they will use average incomes for that. What you need to look at is non-managerial real wages. And the thing is, even assuming that they're talking about non-managerial real wages, which would be an absolute shock. Especially because and the reason it has to be non-managerial is because the people at the very top income brackets get so much of an increase every year that it cancels out the stagnation for the rest of us.
Inflation has finally cooled.
Which doesn't mean that prices are going down. It means they've stopped going up so fast.
What more must a president do to win over the public?
Maybe stop committing genocide.
Unfortunately, the variety of explanations bandied about that prices remain high, that misinformation prevails, that we're caught.
Well, I mean, maybe start with the one about prices remaining high. Like, my fucking grocery bill doubled in the past couple of years, for fuck's sake. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It hasn't gone down. I have, I buy basically the same shit every single time. It hasn't gone down.
In a post-pandemic funk,
It's not
overlook what is
post-pandemic.
likely the core of today's problem. The president has done a great deal to improve the economy.
Yeah, you mentioned the stock market. That's not the economy. That's just rich people.
Championing investments in infrastructure, bringing manufacturing jobs back.
That's not a good thing. The reason those manufacturing jobs are coming back is because at this point, the wages are so low in those jobs that you can pay people so little that the shipping costs are making the difference. Basically, workers in the US have lost so much purchasing power in their wages that it's actually cheaper to make the shit here than to do it in China.
Stateside, and pointing us towards what we all hope will be a soft landing. But he has the misfortune of presiding over a country that has undergone at least a quarter century of economic carnage for middle and low-income America.
And it is still experiencing economic carnage for middle and low-income America. It's nice that this writer actually acknowledges that there is a difference between what's going on with the stock, because the thing is, most of the time, you will not hear that there is economic carnage going on for most people, which is what they mean when they say middle and low income America. They mean most people. Like, that's not some sort of, like, niche constituency. That's, like, the overwhelming majority of the population. That's nearly everybody.
Until recently, however, the extent was shrouded by economic statistics. To be fair, the economy has improved considerably since Biden took office, but as research by my colleagues at the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity, or LISEP...
Okay, who the hell are they? Okay, here's an interesting point. Okay, the Ludwig Institute actually sounds like they might be halfway decent. I've never heard of these people. But they have something called the true rate of unemployment. And the true rate of unemployment is what they call functional unemployment. Using data, okay. And this tracks the percentage of the U.S. labor force that doesn't have a full-time job, but once one has no job, does not earn a living wage, conservatively pegged, very conservatively pegged, at 20 grand annually before taxes. I mean, does this also include the people? And yeah, so their true rate of unemployment went up 0.5 percentage point, and that's 22.9%, versus the headline rate of unemployment, which is 3.7%. So that went up, and that includes people who have jobs but can't afford to live on them. Median earnings up, living wage jobs down, according to Ludwig Institute. January 18th, 2024. American workers saw an increase in median earnings for fourth quarter 2023, which is somewhat tempered by an increase in the percentage of workers unable to secure full-time living wage jobs, according to a report by the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity. So, like, I'm linking you to what I'm looking at here so you can see it. But so what they're basically saying here is that a lot of these figures that Zenderhole is coming in his pants over are actually not reflective of the reality for most people.
Has recently revealed those improvements come at the tail end of a quarter century that has been almost uniformly disastrous for the working and middle classes. Most Americans raised to believe that each generation is supposed to do a bit better than the one before increasingly have come to feel vulnerable to downward mobility.
I mean, if that's a bit of a euphemism. Feel vulnerable to downward mobility. I mean, I think a lot of us have been living the downward mobility. It isn't that we're vulnerable to it. We've been experiencing it. We've been, like, I was just realizing the other day, okay, I did my first translation job, my first paid translation job in the late 1990s. I was, like, I think 17 years old. And I got, like, 10 cents a word for that shit. That's in the late 1990s. It is, and now, I will say, my rates were able to go up until about 2008. And since then, I have struggled, and I'm not talking about adjusted for inflation here. I've struggled to manage to get the same nominal rate that I got as a green 17-year-old taking on her first translation job. As a specialist with like 20 years experience, over 20 years experience, and an absolutely just, statistically implausible skill set. Like, literally, there are things that I can do, services I can provide as a translator that less than 1,000 people worldwide can do. And I'm getting paid, actually, in real terms, I'm getting paid less than I did for my very first fucking translation job. So, like, downward mobility is not something people are feeling vulnerable to so much as something that we've been on a fucking, like, we've been, like, doing a fucking skydive economically without a parachute.
And the resulting frustration haunts the president's approval ratings.
Well, I mean, the genocide also probably affects his approval ratings because a lot of people are pissed off over that. But also, there's the thing is that he, like, literally, the things that would have actually alleviated poverty that he could have done, he refused to do, or he found ways to do them that he knew were not going to work.
Take as an example the nation's headline unemployment rate, down from 10% at the height of the Great Recession to below 4% today. That's crazy.
Yeah, and actually misleading, as, I mean, I assume that he's about to hear about the true unemployment rate because he's reading something from the Ludwig Institute, apparently.
Biden has gotten unemployment down below 4%. If you add those who are earning a poverty wage or subsisting in a part-time gig while preferring a full-time job to the universe of the unemployed, the actual figure is more than 22%, though.
Yeah, and that apparently, if I'm reading this Ludwig Institute stuff correctly, they're not including a lot of people who end up in what is, in one of the other, like, less prominent official unemployment rates, which also includes what are called discouraged workers. Discouraged workers are people who have had no luck finding work, so they've stopped actively looking. They've given up the search because they're just not finding anything that they can even apply for. Those people no longer count as unemployed, and as far as I can tell, those, I mean, maybe they're including those as well, but they didn't say so in the thing I was just reading, the explainer on what their real unemployment rate is. But, so I feel like they aren't included. They don't seem to be. So that means that's another group of people that this would be even higher.
More than one of every 5 workers. That may be down dramatically from where it was. Indeed, to the president's credit, it's the best it's been in nearly 30 years. But that may not be satisfying to someone struggling to maintain their job.
Because it sucked for 30 years. My entire working life it has sucked.
Childhood standard of living or worse. That's true. Biden is growing the economy, but it's still so fucked that when 1 in 5 workers is facing poverty, that's a lot of Americans who are either themselves...
Wow, so, like, is Zenderhol learning a thing? Is he doing a learn right now where he's realizing that actually maybe the reason people don't feel good about the economy is that even allowing that there was somehow an improvement in the economy, it still sucks for them? And is he not going to mention the genocide?
Experiencing a bad economy in their world, or no people experiencing it rough, and that is influencing their opinion on the economy, even if they themselves aren't getting it too badly.
Yeah, and the thing is that I've been hearing that I've been living in a good economy for most of my working life, for most of my life. Like, I was hearing that it was a booming economy in the 80s. It was a wonderful economy. I mean, yeah, there was the Volcker recession, but other than that, it was an exciting economy. It was all dynamic and shit. And then it was all sorts of prosperity in the 1990s. And then it was a booming fucking economy until 2008. Wow, all this wonderful financial innovation and stuff. And every single, and it sucked the whole time. It was actually getting worse for most people the whole time. It continued, and then, they declared, the economic crisis over without doing really anything to address what the effect it had on, working people, after 2008. They just sort of bailed out rich people and then said, yeah, we don't need to do anything for most people. They did fuck all for us. And then they went back to saying, oh, look at the wonderful economy and stuff, and it kept getting fucking worse. I have not actually had a pay rise in a very long time. In any meaningful sense. Because, the amount that you can get in my industry, it's just been getting harder and harder to find people who will pay, a good rate. Because they're, constantly, there's this constant downward pressure because we live in capitalism, and every cent that people who do the work get is money that the people who make their money off of owning shit don't get. So, is he realizing that maybe the reason people say the economy sucks is because the economy has been getting worse for longer than his ass has been alive? And so even allowing that it might have gotten a little better, it still sucks shit?
Or consider what Americans are earning. To look at prevailing wage statistics, the median today sits at more than $58,000 a year. But
is that including managerial?
If you include workers excluded from that measure, those working part-time and those who are unemployed, and the number comes down to 50,000. A meaningful difference.
And it's worth noting, 50,000 now is, 50,000 in 2000 is worth 90 grand now. The 50,000 in 2000 money is, in present day values, roughly 90,000. So 50,000 now is fucking poverty wages in the 1990s.
For the median income worker. Even more painful, during the early 1980s, the gap separating those in the top 10% and bottom 25% of earners was less than $70,000 in 2023 money. It's now nearly $100,000. Finally, conventional wisdom in Washington has long held that prices hikes were modest between the 1980s and the post.
Yeah, because they're all a bunch of rich motherfuckers and they can afford it.
But the Consumer Price Index, CPI, inadvertently hides the reality that prices on items
inadvertently, I don't know.
that most families can't avoid, necessities including eggs and healthcare premiums, rose more aggressively than the prices for luxury items like yachts and second homes.
Yeah.
Even before COVID.
Yeah, so, Zan, do you want to... I mean, he still titled this video, Biden Derangement Syndrome is a Problem. When, I mean, he's sitting here, the one thing that he was trying to talk about is how great the economy is. And he's now sitting here reading aloud from an article about how much the economy actually sucks when you take into account how things are for most people. But I notice, in the midst of all this wonderful bullshit that we have been examining, it is time to start wrapping up. Thank you, as always, to everyone who has joined in. Y, Noir, ya que está en la quinta, lo que me gustaría mucho pedirte es si puede, bueno, darnos los datos de alguna organización que, bueno, a dónde mandar plata para ayudar a los damnificados en la quinta región. Tengo amigos allá que también me están mandando datos, bueno, en cuanto los tengan listos, pero quiero difundir esa información. And I'm gonna try to get some information as well to on where anyone who feels like donating to help and is able to help the people who have been rendered homeless by the fires in the 5th region in Chile. I'm gonna try to get some information, and I'll drop that in the Discord. And if you can't donate it, then spreading it around would be very important. I mean, it's an absolute fucking disaster. Yeah, ciao, GGM. Have a good night, everybody. I will see you next week.